The room was supposed to be calm. Lights were set and mics were checked. Cast seated neatly around the table. Then, without warning, Joy stands up and lunges across the table at Andrei, screaming, dishes slammed. Chair screeched. Security didn't even wait for producers. They bolted in like they were trained for this exact moment. This wasn't a joke. It wasn't stage drama. It wasn't TLC hyping chaos with clever edits and music. This time it was real. The cameras weren't even officially rolling yet. Before a single word of dinner dialogue could be delivered, the entire production cracked wide open on the sound stage. One moment of silence followed by weeks of unspoken tension, detonating all at once. Who saw it coming? Everyone and no one. And no. Hey, I'm Eliva, and welcome back to TLC Drama Files, the place where we tell you what really happened when the cameras stopped pretending and actual reality slipped through. If you witnessed the chaos of episode and thought, wait, was that real? Buckle up and don't forget to hit subscribe and comment below. Who do you think truly snapped and why now? Because here's what we're breaking down. Years of silent resentment in one cast dinner, igniting into the first near physical fight in the franchise's modern history. No warning, no mediation, no subtle editing. It was raw, loud, and terrifying even for the crew. And that's not exaggeration. One insider said. People behind the scenes were physically shaking. Andrei had been unusually quiet the whole morning. Stoic, locked in. Joy had been pacing like a caged animal. Producers knew something was off. They'd been delaying taping for over an hour, trying to settle everyone's mood, but whatever had been brewing under the surface between these men finally erupted. Why now? Why that night? What words pushed it over the edge? What secrets were already leaking backstage moments before Joy snapped? Things got so bad. Production nearly canceled the rest of filming that night. But what happened next behind closed doors shocked even the most experienced crew on set. At first glance, it looked peaceful. The dinner table was perfectly set. Glasses were aligned. Napkins folded tight. Mic packs checked for sound. The lighting was warm, almost too warm, casting this forced glow over people who couldn't stand being in the same room anymore. This was supposed to be a group bonding dinner, a reflective wrap for the season. TLC's idea was to film an intimate table scene where the couple shared lessons, except no one wanted to share anything but the room key to get out. Loren flashed her practice pageant smile across the table at Elizabeth. The kind of tight-lipped grin that says, don't mess this up on camera. Elizabeth gave one right back. Disconnected, polite, dead behind the eyes. As they'd both been told to take the high road tonight, but the cracks were visible in every glance. You could spot the passive sarcasm from a mile away. These were two women trying hard not to explode in front of 8 rolling cameras and failing. Andrei didn't even fake it. Arms crossed, jaw tight, didn't touch his wine. He stared ahead like he was trying not to exist. He didn't speak. Unless spoken to. But his whole body was clenched like a spring about to snap. He looked like a man who knew something was coming but hadn't decided when to unleash it. And then there was Joy. Jittery, tense, annoyed. He fiddled with his silverware. Couldn't sit still for more than seconds. Every soft laugh at the table seemed to irritate him. You could feel the pressure building in him like steam under a pot lid. There wasn't a single meaningful conversation happening. It was fake politeness, polite passive aggression, and then Silent inner monologue saying things none of them dared admit out loud. Every fork tap sounded like a countdown clock. Ticking toward a blow-up. Everyone knew it. Production included. Producers whispered to each other behind the cameras. Security was already on standby. Not just present, but ready. Because this wasn't going to be a season wrap. It was going to be a cast reckoning. And once someone made the wrong joke at the wrong second, that fake dinner party atmosphere snapped like a toothpick and fireworks hit hard. Wait for it. It happened in less than seconds. Joy, leaning back in his chair, with a half smirk, tossed out a sarcastic one-liner, as casually as you drop a napkin. Guess Andrei thinks he's producing the show now, too, huh? On paper, it sounds light. Offhand. But in that moment, the air shifted. What the cameras didn't catch, but the mics absolutely did, was the silence that followed. Not the awkward kind. The kind that makes your stomach twist because everyone knows someone's about to lose it. Andrei didn't take seconds to respond. He slapped his palm on the table hard enough to rattle glasses. That echo is burned into the audio. You think you can talk like that to me? His voice isn't theatrical. It isn't for show. It's furious, guttural, real. Joy shot back fast. Too fast, with that sharp defensive tone fueled more by pride than logic. At least I don't bully my wife on camera. Cut. That was it. Someone should have pulled the plug right there. But instead, Andrei stood up so fast his chair screeched across the floor, nearly knocking over a camera rig. Yara's fork hit her plate. Loren grabbed Elizabeth's wrist under the table. You could hear a producer yell, "Cut," before the mics actually clipped. Nobody moved fast enough. Security rushed in only after Andrei lunged one step forward. Past the point of no return. Joy didn't back down either, eyes wide, voice rising, barking over producers. The frame that aired, cleaned, cropped, drenched in dramatic music. But what really happened that night behind the press release? It was a physical standoff so serious that TLC shut down filming for nearly an hour. Crew rushed the women to a back hallway. Loren and Elizabeth were pushed into separate rooms. No one wanted Yara anywhere near the chaos. The bottle burst. And this wasn't just a Joy versus Andrei outburst anymore. No, this was every buried frustration from the entire season finally boiling over in front of crew members who looked physically disturbed. And as they tried to contain the men, something even worse happened. Elizabeth saw a confessional clip from Loren that would destroy their years-long friendship. Next, gloves off. While everyone focused on the Joy and Andrei blowout, something else was unraveling. Quieter, but far more personal. It didn't involve thrown chairs or screaming matches. It was one sentence. A confessional, a betrayal. Recorded weeks ago, but aired without warning. Loren, sitting in her solo interview chair under studio lights, had said it clear as day. Elizabeth deserves better. Andrei goes too far. Just words. No raised voice, no wild gestures. But for Elizabeth, watching that clip from a backroom monitor after the fight, it was a punch to the gut. This wasn't a stranger talking. It was Loren, her friend, her former ride or die on and off the show. They'd weathered public drama together for years, filmed birthday parties, shared hotel rooms. During press weekends, did eye rolls and sync during family fights. Socials were full of throwback selfies, inside jokes, wine nights. So when Elizabeth heard Loren not only criticize her husband, but imply she herself had settled or deserved more, it wasn't shade. It was loaded. Even worse, the tone calm. Almost clinical, like Loren had rehearsed that line instead of calling Elizabeth first. Producers handed Elizabeth tissues. Not for show. That clip cracked something in her. She wasn't angry at first, just stunned, heartbroken. You could see it in her body. This sudden stiffness, like she stopped trusting the floor under her feet. Then came the new realization. Millions of people would hear Loren say that on national TV. Viewers would start forming their own opinions. Some already had. Reddit threads lit up within minutes of it airing. Loren's right. Liz looks blind. Why is she defending Andrei again? It wasn't just a dig. It was a narrative shift. And Loren didn't just say it once. Sources say she doubled down in follow-up footage, calling Andrei's energy toxic for filming, and hinting Elizabeth was being controlled. From Elizabeth's POV, that wasn't accountability. That was betrayal. Glossed up, framed as concern. And when Elizabeth finally confronted Loren off camera, what she said next hit harder than anything Joy or Andrei. Through that night, it flipped the entire dynamic. While the cameras followed the chaos outside, something way more fragile was collapsing behind a locked bathroom door. No shouting, no cameras. No speeches at the dinner table, just the sound of controlled crying through a tiled wall. Yara sat on the bathroom floor with her knees pulled to her chest, whispering through tears, "I can't do this anymore." And she wasn't talking about the show. This wasn't about lighting, drama, or producers. This was about her entire future on the line. Her status, her marriage, her ability to stay in the country she now calls home. Nobody saw this side during dinner. She showed up in full glam, like always camera ready. But underneath, the pressure had reached her limit. And outside that door, Joy was livid, pacing, fuming, venting about her, manipulating their storyline with lawyers and deadlines. What viewers didn't know is that behind the scenes, Yara's green card situation was entering a red zone. Legal delays, documentation, missed confidential letters sent, immigration stuff, the show barely covers, but that she lives with every single day. By the time Andrea and Joy were swinging chairs and tantrums, Yara was already on the edge to the world. Joy looked like a fed-up husband trying to get through another season. But what his reactions also showed was resentment brewing from months of legal noise, mistrust checks, and escalating miscommunication that had nothing to do with TV ratings. Sources said she'd been trying to get help from the network. But taps were running dry, and when producers tried to calm her down that night, she reportedly told them, "No one cares unless something explodes, so I have to fall apart." She didn't want to fight. She wanted peace, stability, a life. But instead, she got cameras while she questioned if her relationship and her rights were slipping through her fingers. And the tragic part, she never raised her voice. She just collapsed in silence. Back in the studio, Joy was about to say something that pushed their already strained marriage even closer to implosion. And it was all caught on mic. Brace yourself. Nobody expected Gino to be the one who broke. Not like this. Not when the spotlight wasn't even on him yet. The studio was still reeling from the dinner disaster when producers made the call to prep footage for confessional reactions. That routine check turned into a ticking bomb the second Gino was shown Jasmine's unreleased clips. And within seconds, everything flipped. Quietly, Jasmine had admitted their intimacy had gone cold months ago. That she felt distant. That she didn't fully trust his version of things. It was said with a calm voice, but the cuts ran deep. Gino exploded. Not at Jasmine, but at the crew. "You set me up," he yelled, yanking his Microphone off and letting it crash to the floor. It was loud enough to be picked up on 3 separate audio feeds. Someone tried to speak into his earpiece. He ripped that off, too. Within seconds, he stormed out of the room. Tension turned to panic as producers scrambled after him, trying to keep the cameras off while someone else grabbed legal. Gino wasn't threatening to walk off the show anymore. He was threatening lawsuits, saying he was being manipulated, set up, lied to on and off camera. Someone tried to hand him water. Another tried to calm him down with schedules Gino wasn't having. If this airs and he told a field director, I'm done. Not coming back. Not to this show, not to her. And through all of it, Jasmine said nothing. She sat in her own dressing room completely still. No calls, no messages, no knock on Gino's door. Her silence was louder than any breakup speech could have been because whatever she had said on screen. She didn't try to undo it, didn't chase after him. And for Gino, that was somehow the loudest betrayal of all. What Gino didn't know then was that Jasmine hadn't just spoken once. More footage was coming, and it made things worse than he ever imagined. Get ready for the next unraveling. By sunrise, the vibe on set was no longer reality TV. It was emergency response. TLC had switched into full crisis mode after one night turned season into something they might not legally be able to finish. The reunion dinner meant to celebrate season resolutions had set off a powder keg. And cleanup wasn't just about emotions now. It was legal. It was financial. It was damage control with cameras rolling. The cast arrived in silence one by one. Each escorted into separate dressing rooms. No eye contact. No shared glam sessions. Loren and Elizabeth were being kept apart for emotional well-being. E and Andrei were guarded. Literally, to avoid another near brawl. Yara was given a separate call time. Gino's name wasn't even on the board. Security was doubled. Legal advisors were flown in. Scripts were rewritten overnight. Entire scene schedules scrapped. A day of confessionals became strategy sessions disguised as interviews. No one knew if they were still filming a TV show or managing a lawsuit in progress. And the crew, half, were emotionally wrecked. Camera operators who'd worked hour days were now helping coordinate counseling requests. One makeup artist reportedly wiped off her own tears before entering Loren's room. There were real breakdowns happening off camera, and some of it, according to insiders, didn't even have to do with cast. Crew members said they felt like they were watching people fall apart for real and not being allowed to step in. Meanwhile, the producers faced one core problem. So much of the footage from the previous day couldn't be aired. It was raw, volatile, legally risky. Entire chunks had to be sliced out, res hot, or covered in slow reaction shots with completely different audio. But worse, the trust between cast and production had cracked. Gina was threatening to sue. Elizabeth didn't want her clip aired and Yara wanted to review footage before signing off on anything. And at the center of it all, TLC had to somehow make a show anyway. A show that now felt less like entertainment and more like evidence. And just when the crew thought things couldn't get darker, a tape leaked, one that took everything from off-site whispers to full-blown public catastrophe. And it involved Jenny and Sumit. Just as the studio was catching its breath from one implosion, a second one detonated, this time miles away in India. What started as a single leaked audio clip cracked the entire franchise. At its emotional core. No cameras, no reunion set, not even current cast. But the fallout from this bomb hit like a tidal wave. Because it wasn't just betrayal, it was betrayal with receipts. An 8-minute recording of Sumit was posted anonymously to a private Telegram group before ending up all over Reddit, TikTok, YouTube channels, and Facebook groups faster than TLC could even log in. In it, Sumit is allegedly heard saying Jenny was kind, loyal, and his path to America. Not love, not soulmates, opportunity. He says it plainly. She thinks it's about love for me. It's about something bigger. Jenny hadn't even seen the leak when it dropped. According to insiders, producers broke the news to her slowly. She was sitting at her dining table alone when someone handed her an iPhone with the audio file preloaded. They didn't talk. She hit play. What happened? Next hit harder than any on-screen moment she's ever had. She listened. All minutes. No blinking, no tears at first. Then she whispered just 3 words. He deceived me and got up to leave the room. That quiet walk away was more disturbing than any meltdown. No screaming, no denial. Just a woman realizing the person she gave her life to may have used her as a stepping stone. This wasn't just about Sumit and Jenny anymore. This was about what the franchise allowed, overlooked, edited around, and the internet went feral. Hashtag justice for Jenny began trending. Fans called for Sumit to be dropped from the franchise. Others dug up old clips, posts, patterns. This wasn't just heartbreak anymore. It was public trial by social proof. Every little romantic gesture from past seasons now viewed through a different lens, and none of them felt innocent anymore. The second clip was worse. A leaked text thread allegedly between Sumit and a former producer changed everything. And Jenny, she stopped defending him. Find out why. At this point, no one was asking what happened anymore. The better question was what was ever real to begin with. When the dust settled after the chaos of episode, the fandom wasn't just reacting to drama. They were rethinking. Every hug, every tear, every I love you ever whispered under fluorescent production lights. The illusion had cracked and people finally saw what was behind the confessionals, the dinner fights, the social media posts. A carefully held world that came apart in real time. Start with Elizabeth and Loren, the former Golden Girls of Squad Goals. Practically sisters on screen and off. Years of beach trips, family holiday specials, hair salon cameos. Subtle ride or die loyalty gone. In silence, Loren never issued a public apology after that aired clip. No update, no clarification, not even a casual Instagram comment. And Elizabeth, she didn't shield the damage. Sources say she was done. The moment she saw her name being discussed like a charity case, Liz's heartbreak wasn't just friendship loss. It was humiliation dressed up as subtle concern. Made viral, made amiable, made permanent. Andrei didn't even need to defend her. She could barely look in Loren's direction from that point forward. Producers tried to set up a carefully edited reconciliation attempt the next day. Neither woman agreed. That segment got scrapped along with the years of audience fantasy that these two would grow old, insulting their in-laws side by side. And then you had Yara crumbling not in front of fans, but in front of herself. She wasn't even sure anymore why she kept smiling for the cameras or what she was even fighting for. Marriage, paperwork, protection, or peace. You could hear it in her leaked tears. I am done. She didn't scream it. She said it flat, like fact. Not anger. Not manipulation. Pure survival mode. Off camera, sources whispered she had threatened to fly home, not to quit the marriage, to end her chapter in America. No storyline was worth losing her identity, her country, her dignity. And when Joyce saw that side of her, even he looked shaken. Maybe they both realized they were no longer in the same story. Then came Gino, still gritting his teeth. Behind closed doors because his private emotional spiral had been turned into public property. Once he walked off that set, things got worse. He didn't just lose control. He lost control of the narrative. Once Jasmine's confessionals aired in fragments and fans pieced together the emotional distance, the doubt, the silence, he realized he could no longer correct the record. The internet had already decided. His Instagram went dark. YouTube channels analyzed his tone. Old clips got reposted. And Gino meltdown trended on day forums globally. Gino tried to chase it from behind. Making calls. Sending off camera complaints, even pressuring producers to reframe his footage, but it was too late. Once you break trust with your audience, they don't rewind, they replay. That's the power of unscripted TV. The damage doesn't happen when the cameras are on. It happens afterward when your worst moment becomes someone else's favorite meme. And the truth is this episode, this whole sequence of disaster wasn't outrageous because it was produced. It was outrageous because it wasn't. No lighting trick, no ADR lines, no carefully placed dramatic pauses. This was real people reaching their emotional limits on cue. This was years of unresolved resentment, jealousy, manipulation, strategic silence, and pressure detonating all in one shooting schedule. What started as a dinner became a defamation war. What started as venting became filing legal memos. What started as one more tell moment became a slow realization that this show had stopped being about love long ago. And yes, the show must go on. But you tell me, how does a franchise built on the illusion of grown-up fairy tales and second chances move forward when an entire season ends like a courtroom docu-series? When real immigration struggles, marital trauma, and personal betrayal stop being plotlines and start becoming liabilities, the entire foundation shakes. And it shook hard. Because here's what no fan forgets. These people signed up for reality TV. Not psychological warfare. But by season, episode, that line disappeared. Producers once joked about handling divas on set. This episode, they had to call legal, security, mental health staff, and crisis media advisors. Some of the cast still haven't spoken. Some may never again. And what's wild, none of this played out the way the network wanted. TLC didn't build this fallout. They barely contained it. Bold retention booster afterwards. And with one final blow, even TLC's senior producers admitted off record. We thought this was another storm. We didn't realize it was a collapse. There was no united front. No full cast photo call, no group hug before a final take. There was emotional exhaustion so raw that even makeup artists gave up trying to touch up the breakdowns. Some cast weren't allowed to share green rooms anymore. Others had to sign last-minute footage waivers after threatening to sue. One person had real medical intervention brought in after a post-filming anxiety episode. And yet somewhere in all of it, TLC is still clipping scenes, adjusting edits, trying to shape what remains into a watchable finale. But remember this, what you saw was only the edited version. What happened wasn't made for TV. It was reality fracturing under the weight of years pretending it was scripted. And the moment Jenny whispered, "He deceived me," that fracture became a rift across continents, across couples, across every illusion they've worked so hard to sell. No couple came out untouched. No friendship survived unchanged. And for some cast members, the camera might have recorded their love story, but it also exposed their exit and the final act. That comes next. Because what happened during the official tell-all taping? After all, this was even more explosive than the dinner. Yes, there was more. By the time the tell-all rolled around, every person on that set knew this wasn't entertainment anymore. It was survival. TLC tried to soften the scenes with beauty lighting, topical questions, and those awkward fake smiles from their host. But no amount of glamour or gentle segues could hide what had just gone down behind the curtain. Not just a dinner that exploded, not just one cast member walking off, not just broken friendships. No, this was an entire season gutted from the inside out. And TLC knew it. Producers were now editing around red flags like surgeons with white gloves on, trying to stitch a narrative back together that wouldn't set off public panic. Half the usable footage was drowned in audio bleeps, legal notes, or emotional breakdowns too raw to be usable. Multiple confessionals had to be re-recorded. Others were pulled entirely. In one shocking move, a complete nude segment originally scheduled for episode was placed under internal lockdown. Too personal. Too painful, too legally risky. Crew members described the energy that day like a courtroom. Stiff, nerve-wracked, underscored by fear that at any moment someone might just blow up again. Not for ratings, for real. The cast wasn't performing anymore. They were protecting themselves. Loren wouldn't sit on a couch with an FT of Elizabeth. That had to be negotiated days in advance. Before she'd even appear on set. Cameras were positioned carefully, so no wide shots would capture them, breathing the same air. Gina refused to appear with Jasmine unless he got final word on what aired. He tried to negotiate mid-show. Producers reportedly agreed to none of his conditions, and Yara didn't even speak to Joy off stage. Not a single word between segments. Everything they said to each other was on camera, and it wasn't sweet. Her visa was now the unspoken third guest on their couch. And then there was Sumit, who was nowhere. The man at the center of the biggest betrayal scandal in the franchise's recent memory did not appear at the taping. Jenny did alone. Tear-streaked lashes, voice cracking. And when the host tried to give her a soft pre-cleared question to start, she didn't flinch. She said flatly, "He was planning this," while smiling in my face. And now the whole world knows. The audience behind the cameras went silent. You could have heard a mic battery drop. This wasn't a reunion. It was a reckoning dressed up as an episode. TLC scrambled to spin it. They called the season one of the most emotionally raw in franchise history. They promised candid insights from your favorite couples. They teased unfiltered reactions never seen before. Let's call it for what it really was, damage control. But here's the problem. You can't clean up this kind of mess when all of it was recorded. When viewers spend more time decoding cast body language than listening to producer approved questions. When fans pull receipts in real time, cross-reference social posts, and build timelines better than your official editors. This isn't Day Fiancé, happily ever after anymore. It's Day Fiancé. Where did it all go wrong? Because don't miss the bigger question here. Why did so many cast members hit their breaking point at once? Why did it take one dinner, one confessional, one wave of leaked clips to flip everyone's narrative inside out? The answer might be what TLC doesn't want to admit. These storylines stopped being manageable characters in controlled environments. They became real emotional lives caught in situations the cameras couldn't save them from. When production strategies turn into psychological stress. When confessional clips are used like ammo between friends. When a green card becomes more terrifying than a camera. When a viral audio exposes years of supposed love as a business move. That's no longer unscripted TV. That's emotional whiplash packaged for prime time. And the scariest part, the audience doesn't always know where the line is anymore. Not between acting and authenticity. Not between real and edited. Not between a moment made for TV and a moment that permanently altered someone's life. And when it becomes impossible to tell which is which, the damage multiplies. Loren and Elizabeth might recover, privately, quietly, or never. Yara may or may not stay, legally, or emotionally. Joy may spin the public version all he wants, but behind those sunglasses was a man who looked like he'd aged years in 1 week. Gino fragmented, cornered, his story no longer in his hands. Jenny, a shattered woman realizing she gave up her entire world for someone who allegedly saw her as a visa opportunity. All along. Was it all real? Enough of it was. Too much of it was. And while TLC will package what's left with a dramatic soundtrack, a host wink, and a few clean close-ups, we saw behind the curtain this season. And now we're all asking with them. What even counts as entertainment anymore when people are quietly breaking for real? That's the brutal truth. This episode forced everyone to confront the cast, the crew, the network, the fans, you. Because this wasn't a meltdown. It was the moment when reality television became actual reality and nobody knew how to turn the cameras off. What happens when your biggest storyline is your real-life collapse? Find out in our next video. Because the TLC tell-all taping exposed even more off-camera betrayals the network almost buried. There's still footage they couldn't show. And we're pulling the receipts.